here. Welcome to the Family Collective, where we have the best conversations about the things that matter the most. I'm Amy Pendergraft, and this is Markel Kristen.
Hi, I'm the student pastor here at Calvary. I get the pleasure of working with some of our high school and middle school students, so I know this is going to be very applicable for the parents this evening.
Yeah, we're really excited tonight. We're talking about what is the best next Family Collective conversation, and what we came to the conclusion is that for the last year, we have been trying to figure out how to keep our kids afloat, how to educate them, how to help them with their social emotional wellness. And oftentimes that means when we're focusing on our kids that we're not focusing on each other. And so this is a time to just sit back and have some conversations about how's our marriage looking. And so we're going to talk about that tonight, and we're very excited to have Jim and Sue. But before we do that, we are going to invite Markel to open us up in prayer tonight.
And also welcoming our live crowd for the first time in a year.
Woo!
That's exciting.
Yeah, we have a live crowd back here.
Awesome. I'll pray for you guys. God, thank you for this evening. Let your word go forth. Let it not come back void as you promised in your word. Let it be done. Encourage parents, God. Bless Jim and Sue as they get ready to just speak wisdom. You have kindly said that wisdom is given to anyone who asks for it, Father. So we pray that you would deliver on that promise this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Markel. Yeah. Without further ado, we're going to introduce to you Jim and Sue Knight. Jim is the head of school at Pacifica Christian High School, and Sue Knight is a teacher here at Calvary Christian School. And those are their resumes, but they have been married together for 32 years. Woo! So that makes them an expert in marriage. So we all cannot wait to learn from you. And thank you for being with us tonight.
Sure. Thank you for having us. It's a privilege to be here, and we're just glad to be able to set the table for conversation about teenagers, parenting, marriage. It all kind of relates together. Mm-hmm. And some of our opening thoughts are going to be a little bit redundant from the last number of talks we've given, just to reinforce a few ideas that we really believe in, that we think are important. And so we're going to get into the beginning, but then through the bulk of the talk, it really is how can we flourish at home as a couple that helps our kids flourish, right? There's some things that we've seen over the years that really can be really exciting and vibrant, and also things that could be, divide us and really create chaos in our families. So we're going to talk about a few of those things. The first idea, the overarching thesis for working with teenagers, is that teenagers need to go from innocence to independence at the proper rate, right? They enter high school somewhat innocent, they leave independent. They lose their innocence. When I say lose innocence, we don't mean moral innocence at all. We just need to understand how the world works. They've been exposed to the world. They can operate in the world. And we find that students who are sheltered too long, they don't understand how the world works. They leave their parents' home, and they can't function properly. And if you can't function in the real world, a lot of anxiety happens, sometimes depression, and that's really a problem. So we don't want to shelter our kids too long. At the same time, we don't want to have any limited boundaries and just let them do whatever they want at the age of 8th, 9th grade, right? That scars them. That creates a lot of baggage that stays with them the rest of their lives. And there's trust issues. There's all kinds of issues that come up with that. And so letting go at the proper rate is really important. And so as parents, it's our job to become experts on how we push on the gas and put on the brake, right? How we kind of balance that letting go process and allow our kids to flourish. So that's the overarching thesis for our work with kids.
All right, and so let me introduce, actually, here's our resume for you. These are our credentials, our children here. This picture was taken about a year ago, and you've got our oldest here, Lindsay. She's 24. She is, believe it or not, a teacher, like we both are in education, and she's teaching at Fairfax High in biology. And she is a sweetheart. She is like the best friend anybody can have. Like if you have her as a friend, like you've got some gold. This is our second child, Ryan, and he's a senior and graduating this year from Cal Poly, which is super amazing. We're glad. Woo! And he is going to be moving back to LA. He has a job all set for him here, so we're super excited for that. And something I could say about Ryan is he is adventure seeking. He loves the thrill. He loves adventure. He loves the outdoors. And then we've got Alex over here. He's our number 3, and he is over at UCLA. He's a sophomore, and his love is volleyball. And he's really good at it. He's on the team there. And something I can say about Alex is that he will forever be the emotional age of a 12-year-old in all the right ways. He's got just that youthfulness, that childlike spirit in him that's just so fun. It makes him really fun. And then our last one over here is Ellie. She's 15. She's a freshman in high school. So she is out there. She loves life. She embraces it. She is just very bold and confident and comfortable in her own skin. And we love that about her. So these are our people. Jim is, well, like Amy said, he is over at Pacifica, being the head of school over there. We've been married for quite a while now, and that is super exciting to say, like, we've been there, like we've walked this marriage route for a while. And so we share with you our stories, we share with you our successes, and we share with you definitely our failures because we've learned from them. And these people are the best teachers for sure.
And this is Sue. Let me introduce Sue. And we met in high school, and so it all worked out. It was dicey for a while. I was immature and kind of learned quickly. And she stuck with it. And Sue is the strongest person I've ever met. She enters into situations and is rock solid, where I can be all over the place a little bit and kind of be nervous or, kind of just, emotional. She is rock solid and just really the core of our family. So really, really appreciate her.
So that's all the glossiness. And then just to be real here, these people, my people, we struggle. We struggle big time. And some of the things we struggle with anxiety. We struggle with fear, being gripped by fear. We struggle with perfectionism.
Insecurity.
Yep.
Definitely insecurity. So there's a lot of issues that below the surface in our family that we want to talk about, we want to bring to light and do it the right way. So amongst the family, the strengths, the achievements, there is definitely issues that we want to work on as a group. And working on that with adult children, working on that with children in high school, it's not easy to do that. But we were really committed to working on those issues, and we have asking God for help. So there's no perfect teenager, and there's no perfect family. There's only people trying to do what God asked them to do. So we just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're all in this together, and we're all seeking God's guidance through these things. So the beginning topic here, we can go to the next slide, healthy marriages and healthy teens, right? So I want us to think about the big picture when we think about our kids in our marriage. If we just focus on the 10 to 15 to 18 years they're at home with us, we're really kind of, I think, doing ourselves a disservice, because this proposition for our marriage could be 50, 60, 70 years long. And I think it's important that we take the big picture view of this, right? If we only look at our marriage as the 18 to 20 years our kids are at home with us, and we focus on that period of our marriage, we're missing the big picture. And so we need to take the long view, the eternal view, and understand that, before we had our kids, we had a family. We have an established family already, right? And so our kids are entering into a family that's established. When they leave, we'll still be together for a long time after they leave, right? And so we've seen a lot of marriages suffer and maybe kind of even fall apart after the kids leave, because the whole focus was on that 15 years or that 20 years. And so we need to back up and say the kids are a part of that 70 years, that 60 years, but they're not everything. They're a piece of it. So it's important we take that long view. A couple other things to think about. Parenting teens is not easy. It's a battle. And so I don't want to be negative. We understand it also is a privilege and it's great at the same time. But it is a battle. We need to be prepared to go to battle with them and for their souls and for who they are as people. And so I just want to reiterate that point as well. Also, as you guys know, everyone knows this, we're just kind of setting the table for thoughts for you guys, is that kids mimic their parents, right? They mimic what happens. And so if we want our kids to do well, we need to do well. So it's encouraging for us to set that standard for them. They're not always going to do the right things, but we want to set a standard for them to do well, and they're going to mimic who we are. The idea is that healthy marriages can set the stage for healthy teens. Notice I said can. They can. There's plenty of healthy marriages where the teenager or the young adult kid doesn't do well. And so it's not really on us, really. It's God's proposition. We're part of the equation. And so it tends to be that if we're doing well, the kids can do well, but not always, right? My family was a complete mess, and God pulled me out of it, and I've done well since that time, right? So you can have a family that's a mess, and the kids can turn out really well, and you can have a family that's great, and the kids don't turn out well.
I think that's an encouragement to those of you that are in, don't have a spouse at this point, or are in a really, really tough marriage right now. And, so I think your point is that we're trying to have the healthiest marriage possible. And your upbringing is just a big testimony to how, when that wasn't set up, God really took care of you even so.
Right. And so just one little example of that. I went to 9 different elementary schools. And it wasn't because my dad was in the military. It was because of dysfunction, really a crazy thing, and God pulled me out of that. So you can have a really difficult upbringing and do well, and you can have a great upbringing and not do well. Mm-hmm. And I just want to give us permission to only control the things we can control, right? We control the atmosphere we set at home, our marriage, our relationship with our kids, and their decision-making as they get older is going to be on them, right? Mm-hmm. So if we try to control the things we can't control, it creates craziness in our life. So we try to control their decisions all the time. And, we have some more of that control when they're early. But once they get to be a certain age, it's really up to them to apply what they've been given, mm-hmm. right? So that's important for us. So tonight, we're going to talk about 3 things that really can enhance our marriage or really hurt our marriage. And that is how we parent together, our sexual relationship, and finances. Those are the 3 main areas that we've seen. And we've talked to so many couples over the years, couples who have gotten divorced, couples whose marriages are struggling, and these 3 topics come up all the time. They're like major topics of stress, anxiety, and most of the time when we talk to them, they say, we never talked about these things. We just never talked about finances. We never talked about parenting. We never talked about sex. And we were surprised by that because we talk about these things all the time. Sometimes maybe we over-talk about them, right? So I'd rather over-talk about these issues to get on the same page to really kind of be healthy than to just let them be and never talk about those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to start with 2 personal stories for you, and it's just going to provide some context to drive home a few points. We have a milkshake here. And I remember back, we were just married, and maybe it was like even the first week or so, and we went to In-N-Out for dinner, got some burgers, vanilla shake over here, maybe a Coke for me, I don't know. And we get home, on the car ride on the way home, we were bickering. I don't know about what, but we were just bickering. We got home, still bickering. He's sitting on the coffee table. I'm sitting on the burnt orange couch. That was a velvet couch. I mean, it's just real classy. And we're just, kind of face to face like this, just really getting into it. Just really, it's heated. And I remember, like, it was like out of a movie. This shake, Jim had the shake in his hand. Mm-hmm, this is where it's going. And we were just battling it out. And just kind of like this thing happened where I saw white shake hit me like in 3D and drip all the way down and on the velvet couch and over on the wall. And I'm just got up, walked into the restroom, came back and just looked at Jim and was like, yeah, I'm going to clean that up. And
I turned white.
Yeah.
It was ghostly white. I couldn't believe what just happened. And I ended up having to paint the wall because it was a big stain all over the wall.
Yeah,
so
that happened.
And it got the couch and stuff. So why do we tell that story? The reason we tell that story is because we all have personal issues, right? And that was very clear to me that you just threw a shake in your wife's face, newlywed's wife's face. You love her dearly, but you have issues to deal with, right? And my issue at that point was self-control. And it's something I've been battling my whole life. So it's what I said to today is like, if we're going to be good parents, we need to identify the areas where we struggle in and tackle those and go after it like nobody's business. So it's not just something we play with, like accept it. Like, yeah, I'm always going to be that way. It's like, no, I will not accept that. And so that was a clear thing in my life where I needed to go, for our marriages to flourish, I need to tackle this area and ask God for help in this area and get accountability with friends in this area. So I did it. So I think our kids have benefited from that that work that I've done.
It was good. It was highlighted in a real clear way early on.
And Sue's got her own issues that
Yep.
there's other stories we could tell,
Yeah.
but we won't do that tonight. But those are stories that are worth telling and worth talking about in community so that we can encourage each other.
All right, this next story
The next slide.
puts Jim in a better light, I would say. So this was our first year anniversary, and at that time, we just weren't going out to fancy dinners a lot, and Jim had planned this wonderful anniversary dinner at this great Italian restaurant in Century City, and then we were going to the Schubert Theater to see Cats.
The musical.
Yeah, remember that? Like,
Back
that
when Cats was
the
starting, back when there
best,
was a Schubert Theater, right, in Century City. Yeah.
And like we had, like, I don't know, second, third, fourth row seats or something like that, and the cats are coming out at us, you know, and it just like was really, really cool. And then I disappear for like 10 minutes, and Jim's like, oh, I got the good seats. I go like, where'd
What
you
happened?
go? I don't know. And I come back, and I'm like, it's all fine, it's great. And then I just have to disappear for like 20 more minutes because the dinner, as great as it was, did not agree with me. And so I spent a lot of time in the bathroom, and
She missed most of the musical.
the whole, I basically did. And then, you know, the car ride on the way home, it just wasn't any better. In fact, it got worse. And then, you know, we got home, and throughout the night, this guy was on the bathroom floor helping me out because, you know, it gets really bad when you don't feel good. So that is a story about this guy just pouring in big early on in our marriage, which made me feel like this guy is in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I think the issue is that when you're sitting at 3 a.m. on the cold tile bathroom floor and your wife is not feeling well, it's not romantic, right? You don't feel the fireworks. It's not a lot of fun. It's those moments of perseverance, of love and action. Mm-hmm. So we like to tell people, and you already know this, but we want to reiterate this point, is in a healthy marriage, love is not just a feeling that we feel. The feelings come and go, but action and perseverance, even when you don't feel it, is really necessary. And so what is important for me to understand is, what does love and action look like? Well, it really looks like me getting outside of myself, because it's really easy for me to love my wife from my own perspective and from my own needs and how I would want to be loved. And so I tend to do that. I love her the way I would like to be loved, and she appreciates that, but it's not really how she would want to be loved. So I need to love from the perspective of the other and really get to know who she is, what makes her tick. And as I get to know her, what makes her tick, then I can really love her the way she would like to be loved, not the way I would like to be loved. And so it's important that love and action, that we go the extra mile to really understand who they are. And it's not just this happy feeling all the time, as you guys know. So it's persevering type of love. And same thing with our kids. We need to get to know who they are and what makes them tick. And I've said this before. I just always assume my kids would be like me, exactly like me, and think about the world exactly like me. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not happening. What is going on with the universe, right? They're completely different than me, 3 of them at least. And so it's important that we understand the difference there.
Yep. The 3 areas that we wanted to highlight tonight are just, you know, where strong marriages are going to flourish. So strong marriages are going to flourish if we really try to hone in our parenting, finances, and sex. So let's get into that. Let's dive into parenting. Well, the first area that can be hard on our marriages is not being on the same page with our parenting. And I feel like that could be like typically like what I do, you know. So Jim, let's just say, is talking to our daughter and they're having a discussion. All right. So I'll be thinking, Jim doesn't have it quite right. Like, let me just introduce myself into that situation and I'll make it better. So I definitely will. And so I'll end up contradicting, undermining. I will just not make it go better, because now what happens when we do this? Like, we're having an argument now about parenting,
about how to parent,
right? And so our daughter's sitting there going, I got homework, so it seems like I'm out of this conversation. And that is really what happens, is that he just lost his voice in her life. And so the big thing I'm trying to do, I'm getting better at it, not the best, but what I try to do is go, okay, if you're going to disagree in private. Like, have that talk in private, like not in the moment. But I feel like I need to insert and clear these things up in the moment. So I'm learning to hold back and disagree in private and have those talks in private. And so that's what I normally do. So when Jim is having a little talk with one of our, let's say our daughter, I'll come in and I'll go, disagree in private, disagree in private, and I'll just get real sort of like silent.
We do agree on the goals for our kids. We've talked about that at length. So the big picture we're in agreement on. Sometimes we disagree on the tactics, right?
Yeah, the
The
tactic.
small
It's all the
tactics.
tactics.
So we don't want to. We want to talk about the tactics privately
Right.
because we both have the same hopes and dreams and directions for our kids. It's not like we're going in different directions there. It's just how do we get there? And so she can disagree with me on tactics. I can disagree with her on tactics, but we can't do that publicly with them because then they're like, they set each other, both of us against each other,
like,
and they're off the
they
hook.
don't know what they're talking about. They're just disagreeing. So yeah. So I try to sit there and go, don't disagree in public, don't disagree in public. And then, so then at the end, Jim goes, could you just help me out a little bit more? Like I needed some reinforcement. He just sat there and didn't say anything. And I thought I was being good by not disagreeing. So I think that my new tactic, or the one I'm really not good at, is then to offer that help and support in the middle of it and kind of go, like, we're standing together as a unified team right now. And your dad's point is this, and let's, like kind of contribute to his point, and really reinforce it so that our daughter's like, okay, they are standing in agreement, and it's a better chance that she's going to hear us if I'm not kind of cutting him off.
So we have three different options. One is we can disagree with our spouse in the middle of parenting, which is not always a good idea. We can remain neutral and just say, I disagree inside and I'm just not going to participate, or we can stand together, right? And so we think it's better that we have agreement and unity, or unity over agreement in those moments. That we're a unified front, and we can disagree privately. And if there's really a serious issue that we disagree on, we can work that out and come to some more agreement on that. It's important. It's also important that we understand that the primary relationship in the family is not the mom and the kids, and not the dad and the kids. The primary relationship in the family is the parents, because that is already established. It'll continue after. And so what happens if we make the kids the primary relationship? Well, first of all, we don't believe they're meant to be the primary. They're important. They're very important. As they're really young, real babies, they're super important, right? And we need to spend a lot of time with them. But they cannot be the primary relationship. The husband and wife need to be the primary relationship in the family. And that's the big view that we have.
Yeah. And if there's a unified front here, then that's going to help us be consistent about our expectations with our kids. It is so hard for me to be consistent sometimes because the teenagers are pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. And I go, I'm tired. And go, do what you want. Like it's hard. It's hard to stay there and to stand my ground. And, what's really helpful is if the two of us are, you can do it. And we're just cheering each other on and being consistent, because kids see inconsistency and then they know, oh, that's my way in. I know I can get what I want if I just keep wearing them down.
Yeah, and another important piece of parenting is we need to parent from a place of strength. We need to be emotionally, spiritually, and physically strong. When we're tired and not doing well physically, it's really hard to parent. It's just like we give up and take the easy road, right? Yeah, eat whatever you want because I don't want to deal with it right now. Like, play as many video games as you want. Don't do your homework because I'm just stressed out. I'm not doing well physically.
Yeah.
And so what I see a lot with parents is that they're not doing well emotionally or spiritually, and they make their kids their sole source of joy, or their main source of joy and purpose in life. And so now when they parent, they're parenting out of their own need. They're making decisions about how to treat their kids based on how they can get filled up from their kids. And so when we're filled up by God, when our main source of purpose and joy is in God, then we can make decisions for our kids that's best for them and not necessarily best for us, because we're parenting from a place of strength. So it's really important that we do that. Our kids know when we're using them, when we're putting them in that place when they're not supposed to be there, where they're our main source of joy and purpose. And they don't want that pressure. They don't want to be the pressure where they're our everything. And I can sense especially my boys, I can sense them like, I don't want to be that. I want to be your son. I don't want to be your God, right? So don't put me in that place. And so we tend to do that as parents. Sometimes we idolize our kids, or we live vicariously through them, and that really sets us up to be in a bad place emotionally to parent them.
Yeah, we're just going to rapid fire a few other
practical tips.
Yeah, practical parenting tips. And
you may have heard some of these before, but we just want to reiterate a few of these things.
One thing that's really worked for us is when our teenager has been out, and they come home, let's say whatever time of night it could be, whatever you decide, or they decide, whatever, we have them come in and sit on our bed and have a 5-minute conversation, just 5, maybe 10, whatever. And that just is like a little signal, like, you're going to check in with mom and dad.
At 1 in the morning.
Yeah, whatever.
12 p.m.
Yeah.
12 a.m., whatever it is.
It's just good because they know and we know, we can kind of get a sense of like, okay, has there been alcohol involved? Did the evening go well, or did it not go well? Like, you just get a kind of a sense of things real fast in like 5 or 10 minutes about how the evening went. It's a real quick check-in, which we have loved. And then even to this day, when they come home later, they'll just, we haven't said don't come in, but I mean, there are some of them are like old, and they come in and just say, hey, just want to check in and say hi. I went out with this person and I had a great time, whatever. And it's not like they feel like they have to check in because we're checking on them, but it's just kind of like this little established routine we have. That's kind of nice.
So that's one thing. Another thing is that about 6 or 7 years ago, I had a lunch with a dad who was asking me parenting advice. And so in the middle of lunch, he pulled out his yellow pad and his pencil, and he was taking notes. I thought, that's a lot of pressure. He's like, how do I help my kid? We're not doing well. And he had told me all the things that they weren't doing well, and I understand. He goes, well, how do I help my kid? I'm like, make him get a job. And he looked at me, and it was a family of means. And I said, make him get a job not at your business. Make him go get a job at the yogurt shop. And so he wrote down, get a job. And the kid got a job, and it was really, really important for that kid to establish some sort of responsibility, the adult world, earn his own money a little bit, have his own little money that he could do. So we've done that with our kids at certain points and say, hey, we need to get a part-time job. It's really important. And that really, really helped them. They really appreciated that. Mm-hmm. Another piece is we think we need to surround our kids with quality adults. So please, grandparents, aunts and uncles, family friends, pastors, coaches, because they don't always listen to us, right? And so they may listen to them. People that are going to reinforce our values. What we say. So we've done that a lot. We still have friends that will pour into our kids, and they really appreciate it. So that's important.
Yeah, and then we often find that our kids don't. Certain kids more than others don't tell us about how they're doing very much. Just kind of keep everything in. And so one tip that we have found is we just tell them how we are and tell them how our day is. And because I feel like that diffuses the pressure, like, I want to know about you, so divulge all your information, how are you doing? And we just start with us. And that kind of diffuses the pressure, and I think they open up a little bit more. We found that to be true. They open up a little bit more when we don't say, how was your day? But we just kind of share how we're doing or a story.
Well, sometimes they don't know how to articulate how they're doing either. So if we articulate how we're doing, it opens up conversation, and it allows them to be part of our lives.
Yeah, and I think another thing is we think it's really important to have an interest in what they're interested in. So he's really good at having an interest in Ellie's music. So he'll let her. She takes control of the music in the car, and so he knows all the songs, and it's just a way for them to laugh about things and kind of be on the same page and be at her level and say what you do matters. And for me, it's video games. I'm really not good at this, but my boys growing up, they're like, Mom, play video games with us. I'm like, I still like it. That's just not a mom thing. But just getting on their level on anything. I mean, I did throw the ball a bunch with the kids, and they love that. So just, it's obvious advice, but just getting on the same page and participate in something they like to do.
And then finally, one other tip is, we mentioned this before, is expect surprises, expect bad things to happen. We need to be prepared for those things so we can really parent from a place of peace and calmness. If we're shocked every time they make a big mistake, like we made mistakes. Think back to when you were a teenager or in college, mistakes that you made. They're going to make similar or maybe worse mistakes, and so we should be really, really present in those moments. We don't want to push them away in those moments. So those are just some tips. Second area is sex, and so we want to talk about this. We think this is a big issue. This is an area that can really promote a really healthy marriage and really be a tool to promote a healthy marriage, or it could really, really hurt a marriage. And we've seen both sides of this for a long, long time. And I think that what happens in a marriage is couples come into it maybe with different views of sex, obviously different needs, different views, different places on sex. And that's okay, that's great. But it's really important that the couple begin to understand the other person's perspective and where the other person's coming from and their needs, their desires, their views, how they feel about it. Because they might be different, and it might be good for us to think about how we might get on the same page, right? So that's the first thing, is really, really work hard to understand the other person's view and what's important to them. I want to talk for a few minutes about what sex is. And first I want to talk about what it's not, right? A few ideas of what it's not. The first thing, it's not an obligation, right? It may be at times an obligation. There's times for obligation. There are times for that. But if that's all it is, we're missing the point, right? We need to look at every day as our anniversary. Every day is special. Every encounter, physical encounter, is special. Now, that's not going to happen, but at least that's how we should try to view it, that it's not just obligatory. We also need to look at sex as not just purely a physical act, right? It's not just purely physical. It's emotional, it's spiritual, and it's physical. So there's other aspects to sex that are important. So it's not just physical. We don't want to use sex to hurt other people. And that can happen a lot in marriages, where sex is used as a power tool. Sex can be used as a weapon. Sex can be used to manipulate, to control, those type of things. And we can do things in our sexual relationship that are outside the bounds of morality that really can hurt the partner, our spouse. And so those are some things that sex is not. Sex is not simply a magical moment, right? If we're waiting for the very perfect moment, like just be special, like we probably will never have sex in that case, right? We need 3 hours and it needs to be this perfect thing. So every day is not your anniversary, right? So every day is your anniversary and every day is not your anniversary, right? Okay? So if you wait for it to be that perfect anniversary moment, it's probably not going to happen that often, right? But there are moments where it is magical, or it should be magical, or it should be more special and not obligatory, right? Sex can also be used to relieve stress, physical stress, hormonal stress, emotional stress, all those types of things. But those are not what primarily sex is for. Sex is meaningful. It's a gift from God. So underlying sex, it's a gift from God. It's special. We need to have a high view of sex as married people, as married folks, and understand that it's a gift. It's emotional, it's spiritual, and it's physical. Those are really important things. So as we understand that gift, we then understand that there's moments where it's magical. We then understand there's moments where it relieves stress, right? We then understand that sometimes it can be routine and ordinary and not perfect, right? We then understand that it can be fun and creative too, right? Those are important. We need to understand also that sex can destroy marriages, right? Infidelity, pornography, immorality in sex can really, really hurt marriages. So it's a tool for goodness if we understand it well and we practice it. It's important for us as married people to, in the area of sex, is to really begin to grapple with all the different facets of it, right? That it's all important to consider how it all works. And we understand that God has a big view of it.
Yeah, and I feel like, communication in this area is so important. And we have talks about this. Like, we talk about this a lot. And I'm surprised, but some people I've talked to, some friends of mine, they're like, that's just like something we just don't talk about. Like, that's just like kind of off the table. And so I think that we think that it's really, really important to go have great conversation about this, and kind of open the lines of communication. And I think it's really important to just in our minds remember that this is like, we need to fight. We need to fight hard for fidelity. Like, that's something always at the forefront of our mind is like, you know what? We are going to fight for faithfulness. We're going to make sure that this is the long haul, right? That we do make it to 50, 60, 70 years. And I think that like in our mind is just reinforced.
Yeah, we've seen couples who are really super committed make tremendous mistakes with sex. Yeah. And it's sad to see the effect on kids, to see the effect on everybody. And it doesn't take much at all. It takes a moment, right? And so if that's happened in your relationship, God can recover that and redeem that.
And we've seen that.
We've seen that as well. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sure that we're understanding that this is a powerful tool for goodness. It's a gift for goodness. It's also a gift that can be, if we use it improperly, can be difficult for us. So we just want to be real with you about those things and understand that this is an important topic for us.
Mm-hmm. And just a few practical tips is like, parents of teenagers often complain, like, when is their time? Because my teen stays up really, really late.
You already know this.
Later and later and later and later. And, and Jim and I used to be like, yeah, it's like midnight.
And they get older and it's
they're not in bed yet. And like, what? When do we have our time? And so you just got kind of complicated.
I like how you say that, when do we have our time? Yeah.
And so here's the deal. Like, permission to just leave the teens out there and close the bedroom door at 8 o'clock. And I used to just really fight against this point because I go, oh, they might clue into the fact that mom and dad are having sex. Ew, that would just be gross. And then I remember a friend told me, and why would that be so bad? It wouldn't. Healthy marriages include sex. I was like, gosh, that is so true. So that's just something that I've had to learn not to be so awkward about. Okay, you know.
And besides it, our kids need to know that's it's a healthy part of life. It's a good part of life. We've had different experience with our kids on their view of sex. One of our daughters said, that's gross, right? That was the beginning part of it. And so we want them to understand that, okay, we know you start there, but that's ultimately not the truth. It's not gross. It's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that one of the things that's hard for couples is, especially, we're parents of teens, so we work really, really hard. And at the end of the day, especially if you're waiting until really, really late, you get tired. Tiredness comes into play, and you kind of go, well, there's that excuse, and I'm really, really tired. So just postpone it till another night, and then postpone, and then the excuses just build up and then it just becomes excuses, And so I think that, by moving the time earlier is going to account for a more present moment.
The tiredness and intimacy don't always mix really well, right?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really at all. And just the idea of just not neglecting this area, just have it in our minds, not to neglect it, because there's so many things on my mind, especially towards the end of the afternoon and evening. I'm thinking about the next day, and I'm planning for the next day, and it's just kind of sometimes it just goes off the radar. So I got to have it on the radar. He has to have it on the radar.
And another thing that people ask us a lot, this is the burning question. Some people are bold enough to ask this question, but they always have it. How much should we have sex? That's the question people want to know. They're comparing, how much do they? And they want to know because they want to have a
you guys didn't know we were going to get into all this, did you?
A litmus test for this. So the question is,
no, I got to answer.
I want to answer you. How often should married couples have sex, Sue?
Frequently. Yeah, and it's just funny because I was talking to another friend of mine, and she goes, you know what? I feel like having sex about, once every 6 months. And so I was like, how does he feel about that? Well, he doesn't, he's not okay with that. But that's as much as I want to have sex. So kind of we're going with that. And so that's really problematic, I think, right? That's just a recipe for we're just not on the same wavelength. That's why communication is just so key.
And the other thing is that about sex is important, is that we understand what the needs of our spouse are, what makes them feel good, what makes them feel encouraged, what they like. And there's differences of that, and we need to lean into that, understand that, and really try to practice. It's like the way we talked about at the beginning. What does the other person need? How does the other person feel loved? In this area, it's really important for us to understand that, because again, for me, I'm just going to focus. I default to what I like. I default in life to how I see the world, and if I'm not careful, that's what I do. And she's like, "Hello, I'm over here. There's another person over here. Please understand that I have a different perspective on life. I'm gifted differently. I have a different personality." I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. So I need that habit of understanding what she is like and what she might enjoy, and vice versa. So obviously there's the things you probably talk about a lot, but we talk about these as well. So.
Yeah.
All right. The final area, hopefully set the table for conversation, is finances. And finances is important. It's important that we have a healthy biblical view of finances. And Scripture is pretty clear that we can't serve God and money, right? And so if we try to serve God and money, we're just trying to put two things in the place that only one thing can fit in. So at the apex of our life, there's only room for one thing. And you're going to put one thing there. I could put Sue there. And if I put Sue at the most important place in my life, I begin to ruin her and live less of a life. If I put my kids at the apex of my life, I begin to ruin her and ruin those kids and live less of a life. If I put myself at the apex of my life, we all know these things. And if we put money at the source of the sole purpose of our life, we begin to serve money and not serve God, right? So that's the key thing. We have to develop a biblical understanding of finances and a good view of how we look at money.
Yeah, and I think we've all heard that it's just one of the biggest potential stressors in a marriage, and I think debt is one of the reasons why that could be a potential big stressor. And of course, the less debt, the better. Paying it off quicker, the better. That kind of thing. It's a major like downer when people are arguing about not having enough or having like debt, and so just the practical advice of just less financial stress, the better, and making that a priority.
Yeah, stress over money really creates a big problem, and it's hard for our kids to pick up on it, right? They pick up on that stress, they understand that stress, and so it's really important for us to do everything we can to manage money well and to really look at it well. We've seen some really sad things happen through divorce. When divorce happens, poverty happens a lot of times. We've seen a lot of families who are middle-class families go from middle class to poor because of divorce. We've seen some wealthy families go from really good times to really bad times because of divorce. So finances, divorce, marriage is all important part of it, and we think it's really important.
And then with finances, I just think transparency is really, really key, and we try to do that. Just have everything on the table. Like there's no secrets. Like secrets they're not good. Like I'm gonna privately have this thing that I'm doing over here, and then just kind of have him not interact with this whole world that I'm living here with my money, and so we just try and keep it just real clear, and we communicate about what we're doing, what we're spending, and so I think that just getting on the same page about that.
Yeah, it's nice that I would come surprise her with a big ticket item, right?
Yeah.
That makes me feel good, but she might go, "What did you just do?
Yeah.
Like, why
that
did you
brings so much stress in me. Yeah.
So for us at least, she would prefer that I talk to her about any of those big ticket items before I go and do that.
Like that would be a blessing for someone to bless you with a big ticket item, and for me, it's like, oh, how much was that? And can we afford it?
Right. So it's important that we try to be as transparent and upfront as possible with these things. Obviously, creating a budget, trying to stick by a budget is important. For some, charitable giving can be stressful, right? Like we have the means to give, but we're in disagreement over where to give and how to give and what's important to us. So we've seen that.
Good can become something so stressful.
And so, we've seen couples go to conferences on how do we manage charitable giving? What's our matrix for charitable giving? So those are important things that should be a blessing, right? That we're giving. But at the same time, sometimes it can be a source of stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like because it's potentially such a big, stress in a marriage. I've had friends go to counseling over this, that finances are such, like they're taking over just their minds, and they're having so many disagreements. So if that's something that's happening, we've had friends go to counseling about that. And I think it's been super, super helpful because you kind of get at the core desire. What's your core desire in how you manage finances or what you spend money in? You could be like, fear could be what is driving you, or spontaneity and fun. And so that counseling kind of brings that up, and sometimes it helps to get a different opinion on that.
And a couple of key things for all of us to think about, and some of us have been married longer, so we maybe thought about this a little bit, but are we getting work and career for fulfillment, or are we having work and career for to take care of our family, right? So some of us want to chase fulfillment around, which is fine. We just need to understand that's what we're doing and agree to that. And some of us hey, it's not about fulfillment. I'm just going to make as much money as I can to take care of my family, right? So it's important to have those conversations. So if Sue's going around trying to pursue this passion she has that's really taking the family in all different directions, that's something we should talk about, right? As a group, as a couple as well. The other thing we need to talk about is who stays at home, or do we both work, or whose career is primary, right? So if Sue's career is primary, are we moving to Seattle for her career, or are we moving to St. Louis for my career, right? These are things that need to be discussed and talked about as we're making those decisions, right? Yeah, these are important conversations.
So we have a friend, a couple that said, hey, once a year, and I think they do it like on New Year's Day, which for us would be like the worst day to do it. But like on New Year's Day, they just they pull out the budget, or they just talk about like long-term goals. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? And with their finances, and it's like clockwork. Like every year at this time, they do that, and I think that's really cool. We've done that.
So what we do is we try to go out to dinner once a year and have a long dinner.
Yeah.
And talk about big picture financial goals, like just not the details, but just big picture. It's like usually ends up being a really great dinner, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day we get up with a cup of coffee, hammer all the details.
Yep.
And say, okay, this is the year. This is what it looks like. So big picture, fun, just really pleasant, long conversation, a couple of glasses of wine, nice dinner, and then the next day the details, the spreadsheets, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So we think that's important. And so those are the three areas: parenting, right? Sex and finances, that we think that we need to begin to think about more deeply. If our kids are going to flourish, we need to flourish those areas. And then the final slide here, the last slide. Sorry.
Is, I think, just kind of reiterating the whole purpose of marriage, like just driving home that point. There's two books that we have read that we really like. The Meaning of Marriage by Timothy Keller is just a fantastic one. And then also Sacred Marriage. I love the title of this book. It stuck with me. What if God designed marriage to make us holy more than to make us happy? And that one's by Gary Thomas. And that's just one that kind of goes, more to make us holy than to make us happy. Wait, I thought marriage is supposed to make us happy. And I think that's the trap that we get into. There's this like biblical view of marriage, and then there's like this modern view of marriage where, all my needs will be fulfilled because that person will kind of look after my passions and desires and totally, be focused on me. And then we get ourselves in this trap because, well, if this person's focused on me, then I become like just, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't work that way, where I won't feel happy if he is out there just trying to like meet my needs. Because ultimately, happiness comes when I'm out there trying to fulfill his needs. Because ultimately, I'm never happy enough. He's trying, I'm looking to him to fulfill my needs, and he just is not perfect. Sorry, but he's not perfect. And so I'm going to end up feeling like, gosh, he's just not doing it for me. And this is where divorce happens, where you go, gosh, he's just not fulfilling, he's not making me happy. I'm not feeling like I could be my true self. He's not doing what I need for myself. See where the focus is on me. And so since he's never able to fully provide for my needs, then I think that the focus needs to be shifted, where I need to focus on his needs and he needs to focus on my needs. But my focus is not on how come he's not meeting my needs, but me trying to meet his needs. In a marriage, like, I feel like I'm going in more than 50%. Do you guys feel that way at all? Like, I feel like I'm contributing more than 50%. And I think maybe you might say that you're contributing more than 50%, and that's a good thing. Like, it's this way, right? He's never going to fulfill my needs, but I'm focused on helping him. And that truly will make us happier, because it's more of a biblical view of marriage, where ultimately we become happier when we give of ourselves to the other person. Like, that changes us. That makes us holier. And so when I'm doing that, then I become actually happier, because I'm less waiting for him to do something that fulfills me.
Yeah, God asks us to give up our life for the others. And so as my life's a sacrifice for Sue, and her life's a sacrifice for me.
Yeah.
Holiness is promoted there. And we ask God for that strength to do that. And we mimic God when we do that. Yeah. Right? And so happiness is a byproduct of that, but it's not the focus, right? Because happiness is going to come and go on waves, right? It comes and goes. There might be seasons of like, where's that happy feeling? Like, and the seasons might be a little longer, right? And so if we're basing our marriage on the good feelings of happiness all the time, that's not a good idea. It's not a good recipe. So we need to base our marriage on perseverance, on godliness and holiness and sacrifice. And then the happiness is part of it, right? It's part of it.
Yeah. In fact, like, our spouse is almost like a mirror. Like, it shows us what we need to work on. And so if we're working on something, then that's going to make us a better person and more available for others.
Yeah, and then the final point here is that, just reiterate that healthy marriages can lead to healthy teens. It doesn't always do that. It can, and it's our job to create the most robust environment possible for our kids to flourish in. Again, not perfect. We make tons of mistakes. If you ask our kids, they would tell you all kinds of stuff. Like, you did this
That's
wrong,
why they're not here.
You did this wrong, you did this wrong, this wrong. But you guys are pretty good, right? You guys are pretty good. And the final thing is, it's a 70-year proposition. It's not an 18-year proposition. So let's look at the big picture. And if we look at the big picture, our kids will benefit from that. So we're super excited to have you guys here with us.
Thanks.
And if we've set the table, maybe questions. I'm not sure, Amy, what's next. But we enjoy talking about these things. So thank you for having us.
First of all, just stay up here. Don't go away.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I love all those points. We when Garrett and I got married, we decided that we would sign a 70-year contract. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page. 70 years. And then, at that point, we can decide if we want to date other people. We'll be in our 90s. It'll be great. But anyway, thank you so much. We have some questions that came in. So for those of you on the live stream, if you want to send in an email with questions to a pendergraft at calvarypalisades.org, it is in that email that I sent to you. You can send it now. We do have some questions that came in through the
or if you guys
question
want
answer,
to ask
but
us.
we'll start with our amazing live audience if you guys have any questions first. Okay, so one question we had here, and maybe someone could extrapolate on it, was a little bit of a working life balance. Do you think you could extrapolate on that question a little bit? What does it look like to parent, marriage? Yeah, you asked it. Do you remember? Okay, great. Well, I'll ask it.
Okay.
So how do you balance, since you guys are both working parents and you're both married to each other, which is awesome. That's why you're here.
I know.
So do you have any tips, tricks, anything that helps in how do we balance the work responsibilities, the kids' needs that seem endless, and then that desire to connect with our spouse too?
Yeah, I would say,
and parents too.
But in particular too, just like, find time. I don't know, it seems like before our last year of lockdown, we sorry, you stuck with me, come on. It just seems like we did more stuff together. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's just a function of this last 12 months.
well, a couple of things on this work-life balance thing. And so the question for the audience out in the live stream is the work-life balance. How do we do that? For us, just our experience has been, Sue stayed home for 11 years when our kids were little. That we sacrificed for that, because living as educators on the West Side, right? How do you afford to live on the West Side with one income? We sacrificed. We don't have it all. We didn't try to have it all. We knew we couldn't have it all, right? We definitely wanted one of us to stay home. She wanted to stay home, so she was at home for 11 years, and we think that provided significant dividends for our family. And we sacrificed financially for that, because double income is much better than one income financially, right? So that's what we kind of did.
Yeah, and I think the key word is sacrifice. So we take some things off the table. So definitely, I remember when I went back to work, my biggest stress, I thought a lot about this, like how can I maintain that balance? Oh my goodness, I don't feel like I'll be balanced. And I remember so clearly, he goes, you're not going to get to everything, and it's okay. Like, it's so fine. And so that perfectionism, that need to kind of have everything, all the buckets like totally filled all at the same time.
We didn't bake as much when she went back to work.
Oh, that's
and
not
did
just
cookies
baking.
for friends.
Oh my goodness, like there were just things.
Wedding gifts arrived late, right?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And
right?
I think that's really hard for me in particular, is to not have it all, have it all together. And be okay with that, because in my mind, in your mind, we go, what are the three most important things that we're trying to focus in right now? All right? It's this, like this. It's God. It's this. It's our kids. And then there's like these extra things that we think are so important. And it was so hard for me to go, yeah, not so much. So I think being wise and taking things off your plate then makes room for the most important things.
And then with our kids, we were very intentional. We do specific things with individual kids, like trips. Like, we took our kids on trips from 8th grade to entering 9th grade, saying, you're about to become a high school student. I took my boys on trips. She took our girls on trips. When they left high school, we took them on trips for college. I took the boys, she took Lindsay, and we'll take Ellie when she graduates.
Opportunity to connect,
weekly intentional things we do with them. We're just really calendar that stuff out.
Yeah.
And because if we don't calendar it out and are intentional, they're going to go, I got stuff to do. So we kind of calendar that stuff out.
And intentionally throwing things off the plate is really the hard thing, I think.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank
I
you.
know, I have to live it every day, and it's hard.
Okay, we have a question about, and it came in on the list, so I don't have too much information about it. But do you have how do you deal when you feel like your kids are being defiant or disrespectful? Do you have some advice for how to? Yeah.
So when kids are defiant, disrespectful, first of all, we don't take it personally.
We try not
We
to.
don't take it personally.
Try
Well,
not to. Yeah.
Don't take it personally. That's the
Is
goal.
the
That's the
right? Don't
goal.
take it personally.
Because they are
Don't take it
they are
personally.
crazy, and we are crazy, and the craziness mixed together leads to chaos, right?
And sometimes they say things to get a reaction.
When our kids are not doing well, when they're emotional, when they're tired, Like, how many times do our kids, it's tiredness.
I know.
And they do defiant, disrespectful things and are tired, and we're like, oh, I see right through that. It's not that you're a bad kid. You're just not doing well right now.
Right.
And so if I engage in, how dare you to speak to me that way? Then I just up the ante on it. I think we try to ignore a lot of it, right? Because it is what it is. But then if we have to have some real serious talks about their behavior and defiance, then we do it the next day. We do not do it don't do it Friday night, do it Saturday morning. Let them sleep it off. Because if I go, how many times have I marched into their room and said, I can't believe this is happening right now. She's like,
we're going to deal with it right now.
Sue's like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Do not do this right now. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. They can't talk to us like this. This is not happening.
Like,
I'm going to go tell them who's in charge. And she's like, paddle out. I'm like, no, I'm paddling right in there. So like, it's not Friday night. It's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that is key. But don't take it personal. I mean, they're kids. They're crazy, right? And they're not thinking straight. So let's pick our battles too. And also, it's really important that we don't try to win every battle.
Yeah.
If we try to win every battle, we will lose the war. If we try to win every battle, we will push them away. So far away, we might never find them again. So let's be strategic about what battles we fight. What are the important ones, right?
Yeah, and I just would like to add that I think defiance is our teenagers trying to communicate. So they're communicating something. There's something behind that. And like Jim was saying, tiredness maybe, hormones maybe.
Fear.
Maybe it's just that. Like maybe it's just those two things.
Insecurity.
Yeah, maybe it's insecurity. Maybe it's just I'm feeling. Oh, usually this is what happens. They're stressed about this interaction that they had at school or something, and they're just like bringing it here, and it comes out as like so harsh. So I always go, what's behind it? What's behind it? What's behind it? And what's important is like you might not deal with it that day, but circle back and try and see if we can get to the bottom of where this defiance is coming from. I don't like your rules. I don't like your. There's something that they actually are trying to say by being defiant.
And some of it's for attention, and it's negative attention,
That's
right?
what
They're looking to get our attention.
I need more attention.
So some of it we just need to go, I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to let that go. And some of it we pay attention to and we lean into.
Yeah.
So it just really depends. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one more great question for you.
Let's do it.
So, well, two questions. So one is, what's an appropriate punishment for kids? So if you do feel like you need to get to that point, obviously there's a range of people watching with different age kids, but let's say that early teenage, maybe pre-16, 17.
Yeah, and that's a wide open one because it depends on what it is.
I know. Okay. We'll leave that one there.
No, it's a very like serious matter.
Call Jim and Sue.
No. Yeah.
Well, I think it depends. I think it.
Yeah.
So I hate to say this, but it does depend on the kid.
Yeah.
It depends on their
it
track. It depends on their
the
track
kid.
record and what they've been up to.
Yeah.
Right. So early teenage years, when they have a track record that's not so good, it's going to look a little different than if early teenagers have a really good track record that's made a stupid mistake. Right. It might look a little different. It certainly is a conversation, and I think for us, it's just saying, it's mainly as taking away things. Mm-hmm. It's been taking away things like, hey, you can't drive, right, because of that. Or, we're not going to go in that direction. Younger years, it's like, I remember like kids at the age of like 7, 8, 9 throwing a tantrum before we went out to dinner. Family dinner, there's a tantrum, and I'm like, okay, who's staying home with that one kid, right? And so we just take away that privilege. Everyone else would go out to dinner, Sue would stay home with the kid, and we would just like, that would be the punishment, right? And that's hard because she missed out on a dinner she was really excited about, but we were like committed to like not making that kid be the center of attention, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we take them and then punish them later. It's just all different type of things. So I think taking away things was one thing that we did.
Yeah, and I just punishment never truly, I think, brings them totally back in the other direction. If it's not met with definitely speaking into their lives in some way, and maybe that's not going to happen right in the moment. So maybe there needs to be that punishment, whatever, taking away, withholding, whatever. But really, the magic happens when there is getting on the same page and helping them to understand, which is really, really hard. But that's our goal, is to help them to understand the reasons why we are disagreeing with whatever they're doing. Because, I mean, it might seem obvious, but they just think sometimes like, they don't want me to have fun. They don't want me to, they're just, out for my worst and stuff. And so I think the communication piece is huge when they're teens, because we can just like, when they're young, we go, oh, you're in a timeout or whatever, like that that the conversation isn't as rich as it is when we're parenting our teens. So that rich conversation has to be what you supplement.
Yeah, punishment is a tool. It's not the
Yeah.
only thing, though.
Yeah.
It needs to be followed up with real conversation and real
Because that's the thing that
relationship behind
shifts,
it.
helps to shift their behavior.
Was there a part 2 to that?
Okay, there's a part 2. It's kind of a separate question. So this person and their spouse have careers where they pour out for other people, and they wanted to know, how do we connect with each other and ensure long-term success in our careers that are very people-centered?
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are both in people-centered careers.
Yeah.
So you know that intimately.
Yeah.
So any advice?
And I'm definitely an introvert, so like, I come home and it's like, oh, I just need some peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a whole second part of your day, like my next career.
Yep.
So that's hard. Yeah, that's a really difficult one. And I mean, I'm just going to go back to keeping what's important, and taking the things away, taking it off. And I think what, for me, and I've said it before, and so I'm not going to spend too much time, but I just, in my mind, I got to keep what's important, and that's how I'm going to answer that.
And I would just add that we can't have it all.
Yeah.
We can't do everything.
Yeah.
So we need to be intentional about this. And really, it might be our career might not be as successful because this needs to be successful, right? And so we need to we calendar a lot of stuff together. Really important that we calendar that stuff. We multitask a lot of things, so a lot of stuff we do with our kids. So when we're watching a volleyball game or a baseball game, we're trying to enjoy each other's company too, as well, and be with friends. So there's a lot of things you can triple up on, right? Like,
We all do.
hey, good job, nice hit. Hey, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
Let's go grab a drink or whatever at the halftime or whatever.
Yeah.
And then talking to friends. So
That's
it's multitasking.
hard, though. Like, I get that. I get, like, the brain being taken up with so much space about career, and then there's family, and then there's your spouse. And so it's all just competing, and it's all kind of mumble-jumbled. And so I feel for that question really, like, I relate to. And it's been painful but good to just sort of say, I'm not going to stress over being perfect in this area and that area. So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think saying no to things is helpful for
You mentioned, so
yeah.
you mentioned earlier that if he tries to surprise you, it gives you anxiety.
Yeah.
So my question is, because how do you try to still be spontaneous if it's something that you want to do with your wife that might give her that anxiety of stress on how much it is? Do you still talk about it, or what still gives you that satisfaction of like, oh, I did this and I feel good about it, but I also don't want to stress my wife, or I do this and then 3 days later, why in the world did you do this?
Can I answer
Go
this?
ahead, yeah.
So what really works well is I booked a trip and I use points. I'm like, I am so all about that. You are the man. Like, you know what I mean? Just kind of come back with just a simple something that I go, I don't need to stress about this. Yay. Because I tend to worry, and that's not good.
Well, I would say, to me, what brings me most satisfaction is not my idea, is what she really enjoys. One real quick example of this. My son just turned 22. And I created one of those tribute videos, right? Tribute videos where people do video. And I sent this link out to a couple different people. And someone told him, and he's like, why would you ever think I would ever like that? Like, that stresses me out. And he's right. He was right.
It's stress. It's not his personality.
I knew that it was more for me than him.
Yeah.
I knew that, and I did it anyway. And he was like, thanks for thinking of me, but that makes me stressed. So it's really important for me and all the people that I'm with to understand what makes them tick and who they are. And I get more satisfaction on not what I would enjoy, but what she would enjoy, right? That's where I try to focus is that. And so whatever she enjoyed, now I try to stretch her a little bit too as well. Like
Definitely.
there's small stretches, right?
Yeah.
Those things,
But we're using points, so it's all good.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, Jim and Sue, thank you so much. Let's give them one more round of applause.